Hello everyone. So today we are going to start with the new thinkers, that is Olympe de Gouges, where we will look about her contribution. See, Olympe de Gouges was a remarkable thinkers in the feminist movement discourse because you have to look the time period first, 1748 and to 1793, and this is the time period when French Revolution was on peak. This was the time of French Revolution. So you just have to understand the causes in that on that background, right? So she was a, we can say, see, we don't have the exact definition of feminism on that period of time, so we just look at retrospectively. So although we can say that she was a feminist and anti-imperial, anti-imperial uh, imperial thinkers, that her ideas always question, challenge the monarchical authority, basically monarchy at all. She was in when we look into her political theories. See, first of all, we should understand that she was a good communicator, and she had a different personalities. I mean, she was able to connect to the wider audiences. She could reach easily because of her influence on communication style, right? So in her political theories of her time, right? And for a long time after, even for a long time after, even basically she challenged the traditional link. She challenged the traditional link between sovereignty and the power, and the power to take life. So her struggle was totally different from any other feminist scholars of that time who is talking about the women's right and their problems and their challenges due to societal factors and the political factors as well. But here she is now fighting with the monarchy. She was fighting with the monarchical rule. She was challenging the question of sovereignty, right? Sovereignty and their link between the power to take life, right? As we know that in the monarchical rule, it was very easy to take life, right? Whatever it depends on the will of the king or monarch, right? So it was about when we look into her background, it was the time period of we can say that struggle going on between, lot of struggle going on between the activist and the monarchy or the monarchical government, because this was the peak of the time period of French Revolution. So however, when we look into the Gouges contribution, she was among the first to imagine what sovereignty. She was among the first to imagine the sovereignty not as something centralized centralized in a single rule, but as coming from a heterogeneous, I mean diverse and mixed body politic, right? Heterogeneous body politic, right? Politic, this means that entire population, what it means that entire population, which includes women also and people of color also, not just white men only. So what we can understand, this move of the Gorgeous was an what we can say extraordinarily progressive. I'm just using the word extraordinarily progressive because of the time period. We cannot imagine on that time, right? And this was a time when she was thinking in a very inclusive manner, right? So that about her works and ideas, where she had challenged on through the writings, through the novels, right? We will look after from the novels, from her writings. She challenged the question of sovereignty and the power, the authority, right? She challenged the authority of monarch, right? Because of the French Revolution, time period of French Revolution, right? But what happened, although she has worked a lot, but in the feminist discourse, because her work was not exactly similar to on to the line of feminism or development of women's studies. This was not like that, but we are just looking historically the contribution of any kind of a women's in history, right? So her writings were published in French. And what's the problem even? What's the problem behind her? I mean, behind her limited recognition. The first factor is the language, because her all of her works was published in French, right? So that's why all of her works cannot reach to the wider audience across the globe, right? That is limited to a reason, right? First of all, so in but what happened in late 1980s, what happened? I mean, this was published in French in 1980s, right? But one another reason behind her limited recognition is this: her work was mostly unavailable, unavailable in other languages first. And her ideas were, what we can say, it was really discussed by political philosophers worldwide. I mean, that is one of the one another reason behind it. And this means that her contribution, when we look into her contribution, so this have been overlooked in global political thought. Even though they are important, they had these ideas. When we analyze her novel, then we will get to know about how she questioned the sovereignty, monarchy, and how these thoughts were further laid to the philosophical groundwork for the rise of democracy or democratic form of government, right? So that is one of the thing. Now, one of the important work for us to remember is the Declaration of the Rights of Women and Female Citizens. This is in 1791. This is very, very important for the exam purpose, the date as well and the work as well. The Declaration of the Rights of Women and Female Citizens. This is her one of the most famous work in the Declaration of the Rights of Women and Female Citizens, which was written in 1791, right? This declaration was an explicit response. What we can say, it was an explicit response to the French revolutions, where we have seen that men are excluding the women from the revolution, or to take part in that revolution, or to get the output of the revolution, right? So men has declared the French revolution's declaration of the rights of man and citizen, and which excluded women. We can understand, like, they are using the word man, not